With 2024 now in full swing, it has been quite a while since we last talked about San Marcos, Texas. And so we thought it was time for a bit of a refresher, going over some of the basics, what you would need to know before relocating there, and hopefully by the end of this video, we will have helped you arrive at your own conclusion as to whether or not it might be right for you. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Living in Austin, Texas. My name is Frank, and I work with the Living in Austin group, a team of agents at eXp Realty, and we help people just like you relocate to the greater Austin area. So do not hesitate, whether you are 9 days away or 90, reach out to our team, whether you shoot us a text, send us an email, give us a call, any day of the week, any time of day. It is what we love to do. So yes, as mentioned in this video, we are talking about San Marcos, Texas. Now recently it has come up in some of our later videos in terms of lists such as most affordable places to live near Austin, or perhaps best places for young professionals. However, having said that, it has been quite a while since we've just made a video solely dedicated to San Marcos. And naturally, with how things tend to change, especially within the greater Austin area, we wanted to make sure you have the most up-to-date information. Again, just going over some of the basics, things you might want to know before potentially moving there. And so let's waste no more time and get right to it. For starters, let's talk location. San Marcos, Texas is south of Austin in the direction of San Antonio. For a very long time, San Marcos was kind of the unofficial halfway point between Austin and San Antonio, but in the past 10, 20 years especially, it has evolved and become a place of its own stature and reputation. Yes, to some extent, I would say that is because of Texas State University. However, Texas State has always been there, right? So I would say even more so in recent years, its stature has improved because so many people who have been relocating to the greater Austin area, and there have been a plenty, with it being one of the top hotspots for that, have chosen San Marcos, Texas because of its proximity and because of its price tag. And so with that in mind, San Marcos, Texas is roughly 45 minutes south of downtown Austin, and emphasis on the word roughly because that can fluctuate. On one hand, if it's peak rush hour, or God forbid there's some kind of accident, or maybe you are a slow driver to some extent, it can be over an hour pretty easily. Now, on the other hand, if traffic is pretty fluid, or it's a time of day where there's minimal traffic, and perhaps you have a heavy foot, you could actually get there in 35 minutes, maybe 40. So it really does depend at the end of the day, but I would say a safe assumption is right around that 45-minute mark. Now, for some people, that is quite a distance. A lot of our clients have come from places where they're used to commutes of only 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes, and so if you're talking about 45, that might be just too far away, right? On the other hand, a lot of our clients have come from places where their commutes are easily 1 hour, an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours if we're talking San Francisco, Manhattan, etc. And so 40 to 45 minutes might be a breath of fresh air. Either way, we feel that is important for you to know because a lot of the clients we've helped relocate to the greater Austin area have done so for a job. And a lot of those jobs oftentimes might be in the corporate hub of downtown Austin. And so you want to think about that commute. Now, let's say you are someone who works from home, which many of us do in this day and age. Still, if you're wanting to enjoy the fruits of what Austin, Texas has to offer, enjoy it recreationally, and more importantly, if you see yourself doing that frequently, that's also something to keep in mind as well. Granted, San Marcos, Texas has an abundance of its own things to offer, but of course it's going to be different, and you're going to want to branch out at some point. Up next, let's talk affordability, everyone's favorite subject, and absolutely something that San Marcos tends to hang its hat on, and why a lot of people are attracted to it. So as it currently stands, the median home price in San Marcos, Texas ranges between about $350,000 to around $400,000. Now, relative to Austin, that is what many people would say is affordable, because the median home price in Austin proper, the city limits, is going to be easily around $600,000, and then you're talking about the more popular in-demand towns or suburbs within 15-30 minutes of the city, like Leander, for example, or Cedar Park. Those are easily going to be around $500,000. So all of a sudden, when you have a place that is roughly 45 minutes away from the city, and it has a median price tag that is easily below $400,000, most often around that $350,000 number, to a lot of people, especially those who want to be close enough to Austin, Texas, that is very attractive, right? In addition to that, I should also add that is just the median. median, meaning that you will find a number of homes beneath that median, cheaper than that median in San Marcos as well. I mean, just recently, our team got an email from the builders at D.R. Horton. We like to have a lot of relationships with the various builders, and they sent us a list of their brand new construction inventory with prices right around $300,000 and discounts on top of that. So ultimately, what I'm getting at is if you are someone who either wants or needs to be in or around Austin, but you either don't want to or cannot pay that Austin price, there are going to be much more affordable options nearby, and San Marcos is without a doubt one of them. Keeping it moving, let's talk about the things to do in San Marcos, Texas. And regarding places that are going to be more affordable, this is always important to touch on because in some of those cases, it's kind of like, well, why is this place so cheap? What is the catch? And a lot of times that catch is, well, this place is underdeveloped and it's in the middle of nowhere with absolutely nothing to do, which thankfully does not really apply to San Marcos, Texas. San Marcos has an abundance of its own things to do in addition to being close enough in proximity to either San Antonio or Austin. So when you really think about it and you're up for a drive, if you live in San Marcos, you're going to have your pick from 3 cities and their own abundances of things to do. Personally speaking, I would consider that to be very attractive on behalf of San Marcos, Texas, because the reality is there are going to be places that are more expensive than San Marcos and places that have less things to do than San Marcos, perhaps a bit closer to Austin, sure, but still that are not going to have their fair share of things to do or are going to be as close to 2 major cities that have their own fair share to offer. Now, with all that in mind, and now that we've established that, let's talk more specifically about what San Marcos has to offer in that regard. In San Marcos, you're going to have a number of exhibits, museums, the San Marcos Outlet Mall, and Adventure Park. You're going to have the downtown square. You're going to have boutique shops, restaurants, nightlife. And of course, with it being the home of Texas State University, you are going to have an abundance of things and events to do related to the school. In addition to that, you also have the river in San Marcos, which is kind of a hub, a central point that people from Austin and people from San Antonio, and of course San Marcos locals, all love to go and enjoy. People love tubing there, people love drinking there, people just have a blast on the river. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, my point is, as mentioned, a lot of very cheap or affordable places outside of Austin are going to have nothing to do in the middle of nowhere, and in the case of San Marcos, it's simply not the case. Now, real quickly before moving on, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, especially if you are a local of San Marcos, Texas. Let everybody who's watching this video know what your experience has been there. In addition to that, if we've been providing any value for you, consider clicking the like button as it helps our channel grow. Remember to subscribe, and lastly, share our content with anybody you know who's wanting to learn more about living in Austin, Texas. All right, up next, let's talk about these schools in San Marcos, Texas. And I do realize for a lot of you watching this, the subject of schools might not be applicable. However, in our experience helping our clients relocate to the greater Austin area, a vast majority of them are doing so with their families, and so accordingly and rightfully so, schools are on their list of priorities. So let's talk about that. In the case of the greater Austin area, you do have your cream of the crop public school districts, such as, for example, only to name a few, the Leander Independent School District and the Round Rock Independent School District. You also have Lake Travis ISD, you have Eanes ISD, and in our experience, a majority of our clients tend to gravitate towards those districts. They have stature, they have reputation. But not just stature or reputation, there's also public information, such as a website like niche.com. Niche.com is a website of a variety of public information that talks about pretty much any area you can think of in the country. And so it's a resource that we've always encouraged our clients to use when they're in the process of doing their homework and they have their list of potential options, places they may want to relocate to. And so what I'm getting at is that these cream of the crop districts on a website like niche.com are going to get graded, right? So the district of Leander, I would say off the top of my head, is either an A or an A minus. The district of Round Rock, for example, off the top of my head, is either going to be an A or an A minus as well. Sometimes there's A pluses, but those tend to be much smaller districts in very particular areas. Either way, you get my point. And so let's talk about the district in San Marcos. Well, according according to niche.com, it gets a letter grade of a B-. Very juicy, very interesting, I say, as we're literally seated here talking about school districts. But it's just something to keep in mind. I'm not necessarily trying to insinuate that it means the district in San Marcos is just bad, right? The B- can be weighing a multitude of things analytically, statistically, etc. It's not like you're going to walk into a building and it's falling apart. You know, the public schools in the state of Texas, not just Austin or San Marcos, will tend to be nicer, will tend to be newer. So at the end of the day, it is just something to keep in mind. I wouldn't necessarily be discouraged. I would just encourage you to do your homework, because if you are perhaps set on San Marcos, you like the price tag, you like the location, you like the things to do, but you're getting a little bit tripped up over the schools, don't automatically dismiss it. Of course, ultimately, if that's what you want to do, then by all means, but do your due diligence and ultimately see how you feel. Okay, keeping it moving, last but certainly not least, perhaps one of the more important subjects to talk about would be that of the safety in San Marcos, Texas. Similar to the subject of schools, on this channel, when we talk about schools or safety, we rely on public information. And just like there is a website called niche.com that we like to recommend for schools, the website that we like to recommend for crime and safety data, analytics, statistics, etc. would be Neighborhood Scout. So let's see what Neighborhood Scout has to say about San Marcos. One's chance of becoming a victim of either violent or property crime in San Marcos is 1 in 30, meaning that within Texas, more than 92% of the communities have a lower crime rate than San Marcos. It also goes on to add that importantly, when you compare San Marcos to other communities of similar population, San Marcos' crime rate is quite a bit higher than average. Now, with that being combined and weighed, then Neighborhood Scout separates them into specifically violent crimes and property crimes. And even after that, they find that the violent crime rate is one of the highest in the nation, with your chance of becoming a victim of one of these crimes in San Marcos 1 in 151. If you're talking about property crime specifically, the number is 1 in 38. And it goes on and so forth, and whoa, that definitely gets your attention. And for some perspective, one of our more recent videos was similar to this one in nature, but we were talking about the town of Hutto. And Hutto's safety was extraordinary. It was one of the safest places to live in Texas and the entire United States of America. And now here we have the crime and safety statistics of San Marcos, which are pretty damning. Now, ultimately, it's not for me to necessarily speculate why. I mean, subjectively, I have spent a lot of my life in San Marcos and I always felt safe, but of course that is just my own experience and I cannot say the same for everybody. It is also important to remember that San Marcos is home to Texas State University, and personally I'm not sure if perhaps the college kid related crime is what influences these statistics, but either way, the data is the data. Ultimately, it is public information and I am just doing my job as the messenger, of course encouraging you to arrive at your own conclusion. As we all know, the best way to get a good enough idea or feel of any place is to simply spend time there, visit there, or perhaps tour with our team. But I digress, and now you know. And so there you have it, the basics of San Marcos, Texas, some things to consider before potentially relocating there. At the end of the day, with all that in mind, San Marcos might be right for you, it might not be right for you, or you might just be unsure. Either way, that is what we are here for, helping people just like you relocate to the greater Austin area, finding that perfect spot, and making that move as smooth as possible. But again, the only way we can do that is by you reaching out to us, so do not hesitate. Whether you are 9 days away or 90, reach out to our team, whether you shoot us a text, send us an email, give us a call any day of the week, any time of day. And in case you're new, on this channel we talk about living in Austin, Texas, the good and yes, the bad. So remember to subscribe if you haven't already and ring that little bell to get notified anytime we put out a new video. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Click the like button if we've been providing any value for you. Share it with anybody you know, and until the next one, you guys, my name is Frank. This is Living in Austin, Texas, and we will absolutely catch you later.